In this video, we're going to look at microtonal music within Ableton Live. Particularly, I'm going to look at the scale of fifths as an example of creating an instrument that can play in a different tuning scheme. So I'm not going to go too deep into what the scale of fifths is. I already have a free manual on my site, which will go over what the scale of fifths is and tuning versus temperament, things like that. But basically, equal temperament is what the Western scale is played off of with our 12 notes. And we have a specific formula that defines what each note is and how it goes up the scale. Well, when you're looking at microtonal music, you're changing that formula. It's a different type of tuning, so you get a different type of sound, a different quality. Because of that, we're going to have to change every single note within Ableton Live and what it plays. To start, I'm opening up pretty much a blank Ableton Live set. Now, what I'm going to want to do to start at least is throw in an operator. Now, if you use standard, you can still watch what I'm doing here and reproduce it, and it's all going to make sense. It's just easier to do with an operator because it's a very simple sine wave is what I'm going to be using to calibrate this. So, right, there's not a lot of harmonics to deal with. So I also want a tuner. Just put in this G tuner. I also have this other VST called tuner. They're both great. This is telling me the hertz of what the note is. So once I have that, I am going to group this. Now, the thing about microtonal music is you're not just changing what the root is, you're changing the entire scale, the entire temperament of the space between all the notes. So if I detune this, it changes the whole scale, but that's not really what I want to do. What I want to do is have a single note and tune that correctly and then go through all 12 notes. Now, you might wonder how I'm doing that. So what I do is I go into my MIDI effect and grab a scale. Now, when I take the scale and I turn off every note minus the C note, that way if I hit C, we hear it, and every other note until we go back to C. So now this is just the C note. And the idea is you would go through and create 12 different chains. So what I do is I go create chain, or actually what you can do is right click and duplicate, Control D. So I would go in here and create 12 different chains. Then once I've created the chains, I have to come in here and change that. So if I do it to this one, this is now, let's just rename this C. This one is C sharp. And if you really want to be fancy, you can change the color to help you as you go. And this one is D. And this one will be D sharp. Change it to that one. And so on. So I'm going to go ahead and do that for all of these. Okay, now that I do that, there we go. I have all the notes separated. Then I can go in and I can detune every single instance. Now, how I do that is I want to know what the frequency of a specific note should be within that tuning scheme, and then I want to dial it in. Now, on my site, I have a 432 live pack, which helps you make microtonal music in the scale of fifths as well as 432 tuning. And there's a free PDF that you can get from there. So just follow the link for the PDF, and as well as I laid down what each of the tuning, the detuning needed on each note is for the scale of fifths. But how I did that is I have this little chart here that I used, and I looked at, okay, if I want my tonic C at 256, what I do is I go in here and I play C and try to get 256. There we go. So 957 on the fine tune worked. Now, let's say you have a different instrument, like a simpler. The same thing applies. The only thing is you're detuning here. Right, so the same thing. You get a VST for looking at the hertz frequency readout, and then you just dial that in. Now, some people will say that you can use the spectrum for the same thing and just look at exactly where that's peaking. I just found this being a lot easier and a lot more accurate for what I'm trying to do. So then you go through every single note and you detune each one. And that way you've created an instrument in the scale of fifths. So here's an instrument I've already created, and to make it easy, I made each chain the name of the note and then the D2 value in case I ever want to change what's in here. And as you can see, when I go through here, that I just detuned all the different notes to now fit within my scale. Now, the reason you have to also put this in all these different chains is because this way I can hit chords, where if you use pitch bend or any other ways of doing this, you're only going to get it monophonic, a single note. So by separating it to every note, I can now play chords and it runs. Now, if you're doing something like analog or operator and a few things, you might not run into that many CPU problems, even having 12 instances of the instrument. But when you start getting more and more instrumentation, you're going to have to start freezing things. There's a lot of pre-production involved when you're doing microtonal music with an Ableton, but it's not that hard once you get used to it and once you get these detune values for whatever tuning scheme you want to work in. Now check out subaqueousmusic.com, and that's where I have a gigantic live set that has tons of instruments within the scale of fifths, as well as that free PDF I was talking about that you can download for this information. And it'll save you tons of time if you're interested in just at least trying one different temperament, playing it and seeing what it's like. And then you can use these same techniques to make your own microtonal music and temperaments within Ableton Live. So enjoy. Feel free to comment below about how you've used microtonal music and if you've created one using these techniques and so on.